Omar Al-Mansoor had everything: power, money, and a wife who seemed perfect. But when a DNA test exposed that his pregnant wife Layla was carrying his own father's child, the cracks in their golden life split open into something far darker. What began as a scandal of betrayal spiraled into a brutal murder that shocked Dubai's elite, and a cover-up so twisted, even the truth came with a body count. From the outside, Omar Al-Mansoor's life looked like something out of a luxury magazine. The penthouse views, the limited edition cars, and a wife so flawless she could have walked off a runway. His family name carried weight across Dubai, the kind of power that didn't just open doors but owned the buildings those doors were attached to. The Al-Mansoor empire ran on money, politics, and quiet fear, and Omar was its golden son, handsome, charming, and ruthless enough to keep the family legacy intact. Layla, his wife, fit the picture perfectly. She was elegance wrapped in designer fabric, with eyes that hinted at both warmth and warning. To the outside world, they were the ultimate power couple, their marriage celebrated across glossy magazine covers and social feeds. Inside that mansion, though, silence echoed louder than laughter. Layla had learned early that wealth came with rules, unspoken, unbreakable ones, and loving Omar meant living by them. Their relationship had started like a dream, fast and intoxicating, with lavish vacations and whispered promises. But over time, the glitz turned into glass, beautiful, cold, and fragile. Omar's temper simmered under his charm, especially when his pride was bruised. Layla, though cautious, carried her own secrets like hidden jewelry, tucked beneath the surface of her polished life. When she discovered she was pregnant, everything shifted. Omar's reaction wasn't joy, it was calculation. The pregnancy meant the continuation of the Al-Mansoor name, the next heir to an empire. For Layla, it was her chance at real happiness, or so she hoped. What she didn't know was that her unborn child would ignite a chain of betrayal that would destroy everything around them. The perfect life everyone envied was already cracking, and behind that gold facade, something far darker was waiting to be exposed. The Al-Mansoor family had built their dynasty on oil, land, and silence. For generations, every scandal was buried deeper than the pipelines that made them rich. At the head of it all was Sheikh Nasser Al-Mansoor, Omar's father, a man whose charm was as dangerous as his influence. He wasn't just wealthy, he was untouchable. His word could make or break fortunes, and his reputation commanded fear disguised as respect. Behind that power, though, were whispers that followed him like shadows, rumors about women, payoffs, and secrets that never made it to daylight. Omar had grown up idolizing and resenting him in equal measure. As a boy, he learned early that love in the Al-Mansoor household came with conditions. Success was rewarded, weakness was punished. By the time Omar took over part of the business, he was already molded into the image of the man he could never please. Marrying Layla wasn't about romance. It was about status, an alliance between old money and rising influence. But even the sheik had his own reasons for approving her. Layla's presence brought light into the mansion, soft, graceful, and unlike the women who usually hovered around the Al-Mansoor men. She carried herself with quiet confidence, the kind that made people notice without trying. Sheikh Nasser noticed, too, far too much. It started with compliments, lingering glances, then private conversations that stretched a little too long. Layla brushed it off as harmless at first, a powerful man's flattery. But the tone changed. The sheik had a way of making his attention feel like an order, not a choice. Omar remained blind to it, too busy managing the empire he was destined to inherit. What neither of them knew was that the real danger wasn't outside their home. It was living right under their roof, wearing the same last name. By the time Layla reached her second trimester, the mansion that once felt grand had started to feel like a prison with velvet walls. The staff moved differently around her, whispering when she passed, their eyes avoiding hers. Even Omar seemed detached, more focused on business meetings and endless phone calls than his pregnant wife. Layla told herself it was just hormones, just her imagination running wild. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. The sheik's presence lingered in her mind. The nights he appeared unannounced in her living room, the compliments that turned unsettling, the moments that blurred into memories she wished she could erase. When she finally decided to get a private DNA test, it wasn't suspicion, It was fear. Something about her last encounter with Sheikh Nasser had haunted her ever since. She couldn't ignore the feeling that her baby wasn't Omar's. So she did what any terrified woman in her position would do. She sought the truth quietly. She met a private doctor outside the city, using a fake name and cash to keep it off record. Days later, the results arrived, printed on crisp white paper that would shatter her world. The baby's DNA didn't match Omar's. Layla's hands trembled as the reality sank in. The father of her unborn child was Omar's father. It wasn't love, it wasn't consent, it was control disguised as power. The sheik had taken everything from her, her marriage, her safety, her peace. She knew there was no way out that didn't end badly. If Omar ever found out, she'd be finished. The Al-Mansoor name didn't forgive humiliation. She thought of running, disappearing before the birth. But in Dubai, with that last name attached to hers, there was nowhere left to hide. Omar never meant to find it. The DNA report slipped out of Layla's designer tote as she rushed out of the room one morning. He picked it up absent-mindedly, expecting it to be another medical form or appointment slip. But as his eyes scanned the words, the world around him seemed to stop. The document was short, clinical, and undeniable. The baby Layla carried was not his. His vision blurred, his throat tightened, and for a long minute he couldn't even process what he was reading. Then, when his gaze reached the name of the matching DNA sample, everything inside him snapped. It wasn't another man. It was his father. The betrayal hit him harder than any wound could. Every insecurity, every childhood resentment, every time he'd been dismissed by his father, all of it exploded into a storm of rage and shame. His wife had been with his own father. The child she carried would be both his sibling and his humiliation. He replayed every moment Layla had seemed distant, every compliment his father had given her, every night she'd avoided his touch. It all made sense now, and that realization burned through him like acid. He wanted to confront Layla, to demand answers, but a darker voice whispered that there was only one way to restore his honor. In his mind, his father had corrupted everything sacred, and Layla had become the face of that sin. That night, he drove through the desert with the report on the passenger seat, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. By the time he returned home, his decision was made. The Al-Mansoor name would not be dragged through scandal. And in Omar's twisted logic, the only way to protect it was to erase the woman who threatened it. The night was heavy with silence, the kind that feels staged. The housekeepers were dismissed early, the security detail reassigned to the other side of the property. Even the ocean outside seemed to hush, as if it knew what was about to happen. Layla was upstairs, soaking in a lavender bath, trying to calm her nerves. She had noticed the shift in Omar's behavior, the quiet tension, the avoidance, the way his eyes lingered longer than usual, but with no warmth. Still, she told herself it was just stress, the pressure of the Al-Mansoor empire weighing on him again. Omar walked into the bathroom just past midnight. He stood there for a long time, staring at her reflection in the mirror, his expression unreadable. Layla smiled weakly, unaware she was seconds from death. In his mind, he wasn't committing murder. He was delivering justice, cleansing his bloodline from a disgrace he didn't deserve. Every ounce of betrayal, every echo of his father's manipulation funneled into that moment. When it was over, the water turned red, and the scent of lavender mixed with iron. By sunrise, Omar had staged the scene perfectly. The broken perfume bottle near the tub, the towel draped carelessly on the floor, and the security footage conveniently missing 20 minutes. He called emergency services, his voice breaking just enough to sound believable. When the police arrived, they found him sitting beside her, face buried in his hands, whispering that it was an accident. The coroner ruled it accidental drowning, and the Al-Mansoor lawyers made sure it stayed that way. Layla was buried the next day in a quiet family ceremony. No media, no public grief, just a handful of mourners and one man standing over her grave, looking calm, but carrying a secret he'd never wash off. Detective Rana Haddad had seen her share of high society cover-ups, but something about Layla Al-Mansoor's death didn't sit right. The scene looked too perfect, too controlled. The medical examiner's report claimed accidental drowning, but Rana knew what real accidents looked like, and this wasn't one. The bruising on Layla's neck was too defined, the timing of the security blackout too precise. She requested the surveillance logs, but they'd already been erased. When she pressed for the raw data, the system crashed. Every path she took led to a wall of money and influence. And behind it all, the Al-Mansoor name. Rana started digging quietly, talking to former staff, tracking financial trails, and pulling favors from tech analysts who owed her. That's when she stumbled across a lead. A lab technician who had handled Layla's private DNA test weeks before her death. He'd been fired and had since fled to Bahrain, but through a phone call recorded for her own safety, he revealed enough. Layla's baby wasn't Omar's. The biological match came from Sheikh Nasser. That revelation flipped everything. It wasn't just a crime of passion, it was generational corruption, the kind of sin money couldn't bury forever. Rana compiled the evidence, but before she could file the report, the lab tech turned up dead in what authorities called a car accident. His phone was wiped clean, and the DNA files disappeared from the database. Still, she didn't stop. She took her findings to her superior, but the case was quietly reassigned the next day. Officially, Layla's death remained an accident. Unofficially, Rana knew she was being watched. Late at night, she'd notice unfamiliar cars parked near her apartment. Someone wanted her quiet, and in Dubai, silence was often more permanent than death itself. Months passed, and Dubai's glittering skyline moved on, pretending nothing had happened. Omar was back in the public eye, polished and composed, playing the grieving widower. His father, Sheikh Nasser, stood beside him at every event, the image of a powerful family united through tragedy. But behind the perfect suits and practiced smiles, guilt had started to rot them from the inside. Omar couldn't sleep. The nightmares came every night. Layla's face beneath the water, her eyes open, accusing. He tried drowning it all in alcohol and women, but the silence in his penthouse still whispered her name. Then came the twist he never saw coming. 3 months after Layla's funeral, a courier delivered an anonymous package to his office. Inside was a flash drive and a single photo, Layla at the clinic, the day of her DNA test. The footage on the drive was even worse. A copy of the deleted security feed showing Omar entering the bathroom minutes before her death. It was clean, time-stamped, and impossible to deny. Someone had saved everything. Panic hit him like a wave. He called his father, demanding answers, but Sheikh Nasser stayed calm. He told Omar not to worry, that everything would be handled. Yet within a week, Omar's car exploded outside his villa, a mechanical malfunction, according to police reports. The footage disappeared again, and no one ever mentioned his name publicly. Detective Rana Haddad received one final email with no sender. The same footage, with a short message. Justice isn't dead. She opened it and watched the truth unfold, her jaw tight, but her eyes steady. The Al-Mansoor empire stayed spotless on paper, but the ghosts underneath it kept whispering. In a city built on secrets, truth always finds its way through the cracks.